we like, I just realized that, like, you know what, like he is just like me. We have the same job,
Right.
even though that he has like maybe more of an Instagram following, maybe has more clients, whatever.
Right.
His like in the end, his our jobs are the same, and we deal with the same stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, man, the world of dating has changed a lot
it
since
has.
the internet and all the social apps and the Tinders, the Grinders, the
Yeah,
Bumble. I don't even know, like, because, like, I got kind of swept off the market there
yeah,
before that. That stuff, I think, was just coming out.
yeah. I mean, for me, I found myself, like I was married. I was married for 6 years. So, I met my ex-wife the way, I normally, most people meet their significant others in their 20s, through friends type of thing. And
Same.
then,
That's how I met my wife.
yeah. And then all of a sudden, I find myself in my like early 30s, divorced, and going back into the dating world.
Did you find that challenging?
I did. I because I mean, when I was single before that, dating apps didn't exist. And no, I mean you had, I think you had a bit of online dating in a sense. You had like I think it was eHarmony was one of them. You had Plenty of Fish, that
yeah. I've
stuff.
heard about those.
Yeah, that I mean, but I was like, but back then, like, you didn't even want to admit if you met someone on there, you didn't want to admit that you met
Oh
them.
yeah,
right?
because it was like kind of taboo.
Kind of
like,
taboo
yeah,
to meet
like,
someone online.
you're online dating. Like,
Ex-
what's wrong with you? Kind of type thing.
Exactly. Yeah, you're exactly like, why can't you meet someone in person, right? Like
Yeah.
that sort of taboo. But yeah. So I mean, I went into um the online dating world. I guess being recently single after being married for 6 years, and I did exactly what you're like not supposed to do.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I honestly, me and my buddy, I think we're having beers one night, and he was like, "Hey man, you should do like dating apps. Like, give me your phone." And in the matter of like, I don't know, a couple minutes, he goes on my phone, he finds 6 pictures that were like old or whatever, and then he just puts me on online dating, and he launches me, and away we go,
Crazy.
which is like not the way you're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
And then obviously, like, I wasn't getting a lot of success. So yeah, and the matches that I was getting were not really matches I wanted. And then I went on a couple of dates, and I'm like, well, you know what, like, I got nothing in common with this person, like this, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, and I thought that dating sucked, and then I was like, like, so here I was, like, recently single out of a divorce, kind of, I guess, sort of excited to hop into the dating world, and
Yeah.
maybe, and seeing, what, like, type of thing. I'm like, okay, I'm recently single, I'm gonna try, and then it's like, oh yeah, like, this is, and then I realized that I really didn't have that much experience, because I didn't date.
Right.
Right, I didn't date before that. I, like I said, like, early 20s, meeting people from friends, going to parties. Like, I mean, like, you're at that age, when you're in your 20s, like,
You're all over the place.
you're all over the place, and you've got a bigger social circle. Like, not most of the people that you're around are also single, or if they're not, like, they're not married yet, they're not whatever. So, like,
Yeah, you're probably in school, university.
yeah, and you're partying a lot more. You're going out. Like, there's tons of
Bars
people
downtown.
bars downtown, tons of people to go out with, and so there, and so there's, and then all of a sudden it's like, you hit the mid-30s, and it's completely different game.
It's
Most
different.
people, most people are married. Most people are,
Somewhat settled into some kind of career or some path that they're on.
yeah, exactly. So, and then like, just the whole, the whole aspect of it afterwards, and the whole aspect of, what to do on a date, what to, and then, obviously, the other thing too is that, like, also texting comes into play. I mean, when I was in my 20s, texting was not as big as it is
Yeah.
now,
new.
right?
The
New.
T9.
Yeah, and
You had to type a bunch of buttons.
100%, and even social media wasn't as big as it was. So it's like, it was very different, entering the dating world after being married for and with someone for as long as I was. So, which brought me to uh, seeking out a dating coach myself.
Yeah.
And then I started basically reading everything about it and reading everything about dating and following a lot of dating coaches online and working with dating coaches and doing that.
Nice. So I'm going to do a little plug here before I forget.
Yeah.
Just wanted to welcome you on the show. So I've met you through John Vo. So I
Yeah.
apologize. I think we're both of Acadian heritage.
We are,
So
yeah.
is
He
it
said you were from-
Sean Aucoin or Sean Aucoin?
Well, I guess it is Aucoin, but they I guess English people anglicize with Aucoin, so I'll go by both type of thing. But it is it is Aucoin. I am Acadian. I think I mean I grew up in Matagan. I think you're from Argyle.
Yeah, a little further on the other shore there.
Yeah.
So you run kind of a little dating company called the Modern Day Hitch.
Well, I'm actually I work for a company called the Book of Love Canada.
Okay, I actually had a guest on, Bobby McGuire. He was involved in some kind of event you guys put on.
Yeah, we put on a lot of events. We do a lot of. I mean, we do matchmaking. We do a lot of singles mixers. We've done. We do speed dating. We've done like events, downtown where it's like the dating show and stuff like that. So there's tons of like events. We've done singles pub crawls. We've done a whole bunch of that different stuff for singles. But we also offer coaching, which is where I come in. I only work with men, so men come to me for dating, for coaching, and the other my associate Geneva, she is she's a female dating coach, so she deals with the females. It's her company. I just work for her, and I guess they I mean I've had I've had couple nicknames throughout the years and everything, but like the one that somebody said once, they're like, when they found it, because like it always fascinates people when they find out what I do. When they find out that I'm a male dating coach, they there's questions. But someone had found out, like, oh, you're a dating coach. They're like, oh, like you're like the modern day Hitch, and I guess I kind of like that, and it kind of stuck. Yeah. So so that's my my thing. I guess like my I guess my Instagram handle is Sean dot modern day Hitch. So yeah, so I guess it's sort of because some people laugh, they're like, oh, you're like Will Smith in Hitch. I'm like,
right.
Yeah.
So diving into that a little bit, so when you have people coming to you for advice in the landscape we find ourselves today, where do you find men or young men or men of whatever age range? Where do you find they're looking for the most help, and maybe where are they falling a little short in their approach, or how they're kind of trying to get into the dating pool at whatever juncture in their life they find themselves in?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I work with all works of life, I should say, or in terms of well, I shouldn't say works of life. I should say I work with guys that are at different areas of their life in terms of dating, etc. Like that. I do tend to get a lot of guys who actually that I can relate to, who are like myself, who were married, and all of a sudden they find themselves divorced, and they're back into the dating world, and they're not used to dating apps and that sort of stuff, and they're really trying to like learn how to navigate that and navigate dating it, and just like myself, so I relate to those guys a lot, because I found myself there too, divorced, single again, had never really dated in a sense, like I said earlier, met someone, through friends, etc. But so that I find, but I find a lot of guys will come to me with that, and they will always tell me that they want to, where they feel they're lacking. They're like, I want to learn how to approach women. I want to learn how to approach women in real life, and because I hate the dating apps. Like I've I haven't had any success with dating apps, and however, the first thing I'll usually tell them, I'll ask them. I'll say, well, let me see your profile first.
Right, let me check you out.
And then I realized that it's like, well, you're not. It's not necessarily that dating apps suck. It's that honestly your profile sucks.
Right.
So it's like it's a lot of it is to teach. First of all, I'll say it. I mean, pictures are it's not a guy's thing. It's women. Women will go out. They will go. They everywhere they go. We see it. We go anywhere we go. We see girls taking selfies from every angle. They're constantly taking pictures. Like girls will go on like a weekend vacation and they want to document everything.
Yes.
Whereas men like. And I'm at fault for that. I think a lot of men, like, it's not really our thing. Like, it doesn't feel natural for us to just, I'm going to take all these selfies from all these different angles and asking people, okay, take a picture of me. You know what? Like, if you're going, you go for like a weekend, I don't know, like a boys trip, and like
There's seldom a picture.
There's seldom a picture, right? Like it's you might have on the last day, you're like, oh geez, I forgot to take a picture.
Take a group photo.
You have to take a group photo at the airport, right?
Yeah. You don't know if you're coming or going.
Exactly, right? So that's that's for that aspect. So the big thing is like guys, come to me and they're like, I'm like, you need some better pictures, dude. And it's like, well, I but I don't take pictures. I'm like, I know. But you gotta get better. So it's like, so that's one thing. And then also I see too that they're then I'll be like, okay, well let me see like the exchange of what you're talking, with women and that you've matched with, and you realize that like, you're not there to tell them your whole life story.
Yeah.
Like there's
you're
a
not
way
that deep yet.
Yeah, you're not that deep yet. Like it should be like, and because what I try to tell guys all the time is that you always have to think any girl that you matched with, especially if she's attractive, she's probably talking to 7 or 8 other guys on there, and she's maybe dating 7 or 8 other guys. So you need to be the guy to take yourself out of the pack. Like you need to find a way to get out of that
Set yourself apart.
Set yourself apart.
How do you feel digging into that a little bit? Like,
yeah, sure.
Obviously, on the dating apps, like women have become way more accessible to so many people or competition.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you find the approach has to be taken in terms of like when you're because like you say, these, especially if they're attractive,
Mm-hmm.
They're going to command a lot of attention. There's going to be a lot of, action probably on thetheir profile, and you have to set yourself apart. So what would be kind of the first kind of steps in trying to engage with a woman that you probably has a fair bit of competition behind her?
Yeah, good question. I always say, first of all, I say for that is that, first of all, a lot of men, like, they don't actually read the profile. Women read profiles, men not as much.
Looking at pictures.
They're looking at pictures. Men, we are very
visual.
We're visual creatures, and that's why I always say that, like, if a guy is not physically attracted to a woman, there's kind of nothing that she can do to really change that. And I hate to say that, it sounds shallow, but it is kind of true.
How do you feel about it on the other end?
On the other end, for the girls or guys,
yeah.
Somebody said this line the other day, and it's very much true. Where they said, you never hear of a guy of a guy saying, "Yeah, I learned to like her," right? Where you hear that from girls. Girls are like, you know what? Like if you read most of the literature out there on dating, and I know that Logan Ury in her book, How to Not Die Alone, she talks about like the flame and that slow burn, and she talks about the fact that in her book she talks a lot about the fact that if most women out there will say, they're like, yeah, if I would have just seen my husband on a dating app, I probably would have swiped left. But it was the fact that, like, when they went on dates, they slowly started liking them, and they slowly, um, that flame started, and they more they learned about them, because and I'll go with an analogy here that I always like to use, and it's not my analogy, I wish it was, but it's actually a dating coach out there called Corey Wayne, and he's actually, he wrote a book, How to Be a 3% Man, and that's actually one of the first books I've ever read, when I got into dating. That actually a friend of mine had given it to me and said, you should read this. And he gives the analogy of, like, the dog and the cat, and he says that, men are like dogs and women are like cats, and his analogy on that is that, if the dog comes into the room, and what does the dog do? The dog goes directly to the person that they like. Like, there could be a bunch of people in the room, but they'll go to that person and they're like, pet me, like, and they'll either stay there until the person pets them, or the person says scram, right? And so that's, a lot. Whereas, like, cats will come into the room. A cat will come into the room, and they'll go next to every person in the room, and they will finally sit down next to the person that they feel the most comfortable with,
or the connection,
yeah. Right? Not necessarily, like, and it could be like the last person. So women are very much like that. Like, whereas, like, women will, a lot of times, they'll go on a date with a guy, and they're like, a guy asked her out on a date. She's like, yeah, I'm not sure about him, but I'll go and I'll meet him, and I'll see if there's a connection. So so women are going out on dates to see if there is a connection. Men already know, when they've asked the girl out, that they're interested in her. I mean, I've done it. I know many of my guy friends have done it. Like, I laugh about it. How we'll go to a bar, and you meet this girl, and then you like get her number, or you set up a date and the whole thing, and, like, you're leaving the bar, and you're doing backflips, and you're like, oh my god, and you're already thinking about what your kids are gonna look like, what your life's gonna look like, and everything, and you haven't even been on a date with her yet. You just know that you're attracted to her. So, in that sense, coming back to your question of what are you going to do to separate yourself from the pack, I think a lot of it is, I tell clients, look at the profile and find something about the profile that you could possibly have a conversation about, because that's what I'm looking for connection.
Some common
ground. Maybe it's something she said in her prompt. I mean, because the thing about it is, like, women, I mean, especially very attractive women. Ever since we're on a podcast to say it, like, ever since she, like, grew boobs or whatever, like, she was getting proposition from men, right? Like, as soon as she became a woman, she learned especially if she's very attractive, she learned from a very, very, very young age that, like, men were going to proposition her mostly, for sex.
She has something people want.
Exactly. So just sending a like on her picture,
she's getting 1,000.
Yeah, it's probably not going to do it for her. It's going to give her a bit of, like, confidence, and she's going to like it, but she'll get that everywhere. She goes to a bar, she gets hit on. She gets a guy wanting to buy her a drink. She goes to whatever. She's been told her whole life that she's pretty. So, like, to her, okay, yeah, it's great. But if you can find something in the profile, like, oh, I hear, I don't know. It's like, I hear you. I see that you like to do this, but have you ever been here? Or, like, something in there, right? Like, it could be anything. I mean, I've seen before where someone's commented on, like, there's a picture, and they're, like, in front of a certain bar somewhere in, like, another country, and if you happen to actually maybe you've gone there, you're like, hey, I was there 2 years ago. Like, what did you think of this? Like,
So you kind of make that connection.
You make that connection. It has to be connection. Like, women are they're they lead more with emotion, right?
Yeah. So, given what you said, like obviously women learn from a young age because they do mature
Hmm.
quicker, physically
Yeah,
and somewhat, I would say probably mentally. I think
yeah.
studies show um, they mature a lot quicker than men. How have you seen like social media kind of influence that as a whole? Because they're getting they know they're getting
Hmm.
attention from a young age. Social media. I'm sure you've seen the real like, I want a guy with blue eyes, 6'5",
Hmm. Hmm.
finance, blah blah, whatever that is. Has social media somewhat skewed the women's perception as well of what is out there or what is the desirable man? Do you think
That
it's a little too inflated?
that's interesting. I don't think I've ever been asked that, and that's a really good question. I mean, I think that there's that notion out there that um that there's that pretend lifestyle that you're putting out. I think that what I don't like about it is that like now it's become a a this whole idea that like you constantly have to be posting and showing that you live this really cool life in order for like women to be interested in. I mean, if you meet a girl and not like it's common to meet a girl on a dating app, meet a girl in real life or whatever they would may be, it's not going to take them long before they um you know before they ask for your Instagram handle or your whatever that so um I think that it definitely plays a factor, and I do I do agree. I mean, like we live in a society now where it's like we post something and we're constantly looking to see like who how many likes did we have,
Yeah,
and
how many views?
how many
Yeah.
views, who looked at our story, did this person look at it, this type of thing. So I do believe, I do agree with the notion that maybe it's creating this fake life, and or that we constantly have to kind of show whatever what we're doing and what to like, because I mean I'm bad for that too, because I'm not a real big social media guy, and it's especially like kind of sort of hard sometimes too when it actually comes to like the business side of what I do, is that like you feel you always have to be constantly like posting and just showing it, where it's like and it can get tiring. It can get tiring.
Yeah, trust me, I know. Like I do
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
I'm not out there in the dating pool because I'm
Mhm,
married.
mhm.
But in terms of business, like that's one thing that my mentor and everybody always says. Like you always got to stay relevant. You got to keep on
Yeah.
top of things. You got to post all the time. So with that said, like do you feel that social media's kind of up the standards a little bit, and it's kind of increased that barrier of entry for the common guy to kind of get a little bit of success out there?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think definitely. I mean, I've had like, I mean, I forget what for me. I remember when I at one point I don't know, I maybe had like a couple pictures, and like I said, I'm not a real big social media guy, and I'd post the stories and stuff, and I remember one girl told me, she goes, and she, after she got to know me, she was like, like, John, like if I met you and like looked at your like social media, I would think that that it's fake, that you don't exist, because you don't actually have a whole bunch of pictures or whatever. And it was kind of interesting. I was like, huh, like, because I never looked at it, I ever thought of, but maybe that's a way that for for the average guy out there, that might be a thing, right? That's like, I want to know, because I mean, especially like, and especially a city like Halifax, which is a lot smaller, very small, um to most compared to other cities out there. Like a lot of times if they meet you, they want to check out your social media to see if you have mutual friends in common or something like that, or just kind of want to know a bit about you. And I mean, that could also be a thing too, is like, I'm going to check your social media to see what kind of guy you actually are, right? Like, and people, you know, tend to feel like if they look at someone and someone's social media, they have a better idea what kind of person they are, which I don't always necessarily agree with that. Because people can fool you on social media.
Yeah, because we're always just posting like the highlight reels
Yeah, I
and
know nobody's posting
nice
stuff.
trips. And
Yeah, nobody's posting themselves like on their couch in their sweats, right?
Right.
Like, which is probably what most people are doing on a regular basis.
Sitting on the couch looking on Instagram.
Yeah, right. So I mean, but I do, I do. I mean, I know dating coaches out there that will say that, like, make sure that, like, that you're posting stuff on social media, etc. Like, you want to make it like, if you're, because that's the whole idea, is that there's a lot of, there's competition out there, right? So you want to, like I said earlier, take yourself away from the pack. So if you're making it look like, okay, like, it's like a girl's gonna be like, oh, well, does my lifestyle
Fit yours.
Right?
So when you're coaching guys and you're trying to get them a little bit more kind of engaged on their social media, are you potentially suggesting like doing like hiring a photographer and doing some like lifestyle content and like having them out at different settings just to kind of get some material, or does it have to be a little bit more organic and candid?
Not yeah, not not necessarily on social media so much. I will tell guys sometimes that, like I've said earlier about their dating profile, like, maybe you could up the game a bit on the photographs, and I do say that, what, a maybe, like, doing professional photograph might be good. However, like, it's also a no to have your entire profile with, like, all professionals. Like, maybe one.
Yeah, that's a little suspect.
Yeah, exactly.
Sneak one in there.
Sneak one in there. Okay, yeah, that's maybe one, but but the big thing too is what I really try to teach guys is that, to, like, and part of the whole process of working with me is me getting to know who you are. And so that when we actually create a profile for you, and if and that could even be on social media or anything like that, that we're actually creating a real profile about you. And what I mean by that is that, like, for example, like, I like to surf. So, if I, like, I surf. I coach hockey. I box. So, like, though, if you look at like my, like, I guess my what would you call that, like, you know social media, sort of like who I am out there on social media, whatever, like, you're gonna see a lot of surfing pictures, you can see a lot of boxing pictures, and see a lot, like, hockey, whatever it is, because that's what I do, that's me, right? So those are, like, you're probably gonna see, and I like to golf, so, like, you're probably gonna see some pictures of, me golfing with buddies or whatever, right? So, because you have to show who you are, because, I see it sometimes where I get it, and I get where it comes from, is that you are, thinking, like, okay, well, surfing's cool, like, maybe chicks like dig surfing, so I'm gonna go take a surfing lesson, I'm gonna take a whole bunch of pictures, and then, like, I'm gonna post that up there. It's like, yeah,
But it's not really you.
not really you. You just started. Like, it's just like, don't, like, and so we're creating a false idea of who you actually are here. So, like, then basically what you're gonna do, a girl's gonna, like, see your surfing picture and be like, and she surfs too, and she's gonna swipe right on you, and she's gonna be on, and then all of a sudden you're gonna go on a date and you realize that you don't have anything in common. So, like, what we want to do, and when I work with guys, is to really, let's figure out who you are, what you like to do, and we're really going to create a picture of that, so that when you are actually going on dates with girls, you're painting a real picture of who you are, and you're going on dates with girls who are actually into the same things that you are, so that you can actually have good conversation, which is where the connection comes from, right? So it's not, otherwise it's like, it's manipulation, and it to an extent, which I've been told before, like, oh well, you teach manipulation, and I'm like, well, I don't really teach manipulation. Okay, it's like I liked how on one of the podcasts that I had when I interviewed Lloyd Dixon, who's another male dating coach, and he's in Austin, Texas, and I liked what he said. His whole thing there was, he said, because I had asked him, and it was kind of interesting. There's two we were two male dating coaches. I asked him, I said, what do you say about the fact that some people think that we teach manipulation? And his answer to that was like, well, is teaching guys to be better, is that a bad thing? Is that manipulation? It's like, no. When you work with a male dating coach, that's what we're all about. We're all about trying to make you better. So we're gonna try to help you, because we see that clients come to me and I can see that there's something inside there that, like, okay, let's really find out those qualities and those cool things about you, and then we're going to bring that out of you, and we're gonna teach you, how to, when you go on a date, how to act, what to do, what to say, how to, good questions to ask to find out if these people, the girls that we're dating, have those same interests as you. Well, that's not, manipulation. That's actually just teaching you to be better. At doing something better, like dating is a skill, so we need to teach you how to get better at that skill. Yeah.
Do you find, like, do you know Chris Willicks? He's a Australian fella, and he's got a great podcast.
Okay.
He was interviewing Brett Cooper, which I forgot, the Daily Wire, I think.
Yeah.
She's a young gal, anyway, like a childhood actress.
Mm-hmm.
And I found something that she said, and I got thinking because John had mentioned you to me, and I was thinking about the episode and how, what we talk about. And they kind of dove into a little bit of the dating pool, because they talked about her dating as a childhood actor, and she's very successful, and she's dating somebody that isn't in the sphere of like Hollywood, and she dates a successful businessman, but she really takes up a lot of the limelight, and she's kind of the star of the relationship. But how do I phrase this? Obviously, as guys, when we're looking at selecting a partner, for the most part, I think most guys would try and pick the hottest one.
Mm-hmm.
So when you work with your clients, do you ever coach them to maybe go after what's more realistic in terms of what they're bringing to the table, the standard of woman that they're looking at, and trying to kind of not like get them to date somebody that they don't find attractive, but like, taking consideration, what are you bringing to the table? How attractive is she? What is she bringing to the table? And kind of meet somewhere in the middle, instead of like going somewhere above and beyond what may be possible.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because we only have so much to offer.
I know exactly what you mean, and it's something that I sometimes struggle with as a dating coach.
Because we want the hottest one.
Yeah, especially men, and oh geez, okay, where do I go with this one? That's a good question, and I got tons of stuff for. So, because I mean, one of the first things that I say when guys come to me. And you know what? Yeah, guys, like you ask them what they want, and like they want the 10. They want the 10. Eh?
Yeah,
you know what?
everybody wants the 10.
Exactly, right? Like it's
8 to 10.
8 to 10, right? Guys can be. I mean, I think we all have a bit of. There's a bit of egotistical stuff. There's a bit of that, like it's that good feeling of like walking into the party where everybody is like looking at who's on your arm, right?
Yeah.
I think any guy has
You
had.
want to upplay the next guy.
I think the any guys had that, like, dream or whatever, right? And just, you want to be, but I do sometimes, the way I approach it is I do tell them that, like, we also have to be realistic of what is out there, and what we are bringing to the table. So, and I always, I mean, I know you have you've on this podcast, you have a lot of people who are, into business and stuff like that. So I always look at them and say, okay, like, so if you were like, a big, CEO, like, would you expect, this like top-notch CEO or this top-notch whatever, like, so to come and work for you if you can only offer them half the salary, half the benefits, half the, you know, um, so probably not, right? You probably, somebody, here's you look at somebody's like
Resume.
resume, and you're like, they've, you looked at all the great things they've done, but you're like, yeah, we can only offer about like half of that. So, but like, we're gonna offer them a job. Like, would you be surprised if they turned it down? Probably not. So it's the same thing goes for the whole dating scene, in the sense that, so that's why when I, coming back to what I was saying earlier about trying to, make, guys be better, it's that, like, okay, we, in order to get that high quality girl, you need to be that high quality guy. And so, however, and that doesn't mean that you need to, be the, the guy with like, tons of money, rich with your
How much of a factor do you think money plays in it?
You know what? To be honest, like, there's not that much. I mean, and some people listening to this might disagree, and some people might disagree with me. But you know what? I've actually had some clients come to me, and like, these guys, make more money than they know what to do with, and a lot of times, and I've had many clients come to me who are very, very, very wealthy, and they come to me because they're like, I want to, like, I basically, I've got all this money that's, and I want to be able to, and I can afford all these like luxurious like vacations, but I would like to spend it with someone, because a lot of times is that, like, because that will, that will get you to the gate. I always say that if you're attractive, if you are, if you've got a lot of money, it's gonna get you the attention.
Get you a look anyway.
It's gonna get you the look. It's gonna get you the attention quicker than the other guy, right? Who maybe is not as good looking, who doesn't have as much resource. But like, it's only gonna go so far. And I like, again, I'm gonna quote, Corey Wayne, where he says, he's got a book called How to Be a 3% Man, and his whole idea behind the book is that, 97% of men out there do not understand women and don't understand dating. So like, that 3% do, and that 3% doesn't mean the 3% of like the rich guys out there, because he goes, he knows tons of, it's just like, any dating coach out there will tell you that they've met tons of rich guys out there, or, good looking guys out there, that will come to them and they're like, yeah, I don't understand, like, and a lot of it, what I see with guys like that is that they're like, I don't understand, like, I have no problem attracting women, but I have a hard time keeping women.
So the retention's the problem.
The retention is the problem. So a lot of that is just learning what women find attractive, because, I mean, even, Corey Wayne says it in his book. I know Lloyd Dixon has talked about it many times. Like, if you look at, how many times have you seen a guy out there, and maybe he's like, and with, who maybe is like not so much on like the, the attractive side, we'll say, with this like extremely hot girl.
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck is she doing with him?
Yeah, exactly. Like, how the fuck did that happen? Well, you know what? It's probably that he, knew how to be in his masculine, and that he, and that he, treats her in a way that, that
she feels valued.
She feels appreciated, but she also, like, she feels feminine when she's around them, which is that masculine feminine energy, right? And that whole masculine feminine energy comes from, a lot of it comes from confidence. Men feeling confident. I go out there. I go to speed dating events. I go to a lot of singles events, whatever. And at these events, I talk to women, and I will always tell them, I say, what is it like what is the most attractive quality in a male? Never once have I had a girl yet say, "Oh, like his looks." No, they always tell me the number one thing is confidence, and the confidence comes in many ways, and that's what I try to work with guys when I talk about being better. I talk and being that high quality guy. I talk about the confidence, being confident in yourself, and I mean, um, most women, like approach, like most women, even if they're not, attracted to you or physically, if you approach them in the right way and strike up a conversation, and then tell them like like to bring out on a date, most women will say yes just on the fact that you were confident enough to ask them.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. You mentioned how do you approach them, and I was also watching just a reel from the same fella, Chris Willis, and he had like I think she was a female dating coach, or at least they were talking about that in the reel, and she was saying like in a date, like you can't just sit, I guess, arms crossed across the table.
No.
You should be sitting in proximity to her, maybe next to her.
Mm-hmm.
She said, it's important for women to feel some kind of connection. So maybe like, a little bit of touching, like, shoulder, elbow, or touch her hand, not overdo it. And I found that interesting because, with all the like crazy stuff out there, people getting canceled, the Me Too, You Too, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that men are a little apprehensive to be too forward now because they're scared that next thing they're on Halifax Noise and they're a pig, or they're some kind of whatever that they're really not, because they tried something that was out of their comfort zone and they just got hung on it? And then does that keep us back?
I think it does. I mean, it definitely has there's definitely an effect. I mean, I've heard that before, saying, well, like a lot of times, like even clients would be like, well, I mean, with everything going on now, I don't want to come across too forward
or desperate.
But at the same time, and it's tough because at the same time you talk to women, and like they what they find attractive is when the guy is confident enough to make the move. Make the move for the first kiss, make the move to, so, but I mean, there's different, but I mean, those are a lot of the things that I teach about, the little tricks to actually make a woman feel comfortable. And there's certain ways and there's certain things that you do out on a date to make her feel comfortable enough that when you lean in for that kiss, that she's not going to, pull back, and she's not going to be like, I mean, type of thing. So, those are all the things that that I teach. I mean, there's definitely, because I hear that, right? They're like, they're like, because like I will say that, like, I'll go in and if we're kiss on the end of the first date, and they're like, what? They're like, well, like, yeah, but like, what if they're like, like that, the whole, but I also have to feel it too. Like, I have to feel that, and a lot of what I teach is like judging, because when you go on a date, you should constantly be judging her level of attraction.
Yeah, read the room.
Yeah. So a lot of that was teacher. I always say that I have the scale from like, from 1 to 10, and like all the different this is when you can tell if she's here, right? And everything is about escalating. So we want it to escalate, and there's certain, tricks that they can use to do that. But like I think it's definitely that the Me Too movement has definitely maybe played a bit of like, just a bit of like hesitation. But I mean, I think that it's also, I mean, I think that it's also good too that women are finally coming out and saying, hey, like, that was wrong, and that they're finally starting to have a voice, and I'm all about that, and I really, think that they that I'm not against whatsoever, and I'm finally finally people are starting to listen, right, and it's understanding that. But it's all on, again, that whole thing is that it's all about consent. It's consent. It's the whole idea that, like, I'm not, that's what I try to teach is like, don't just go in for the kill and go for the kiss if she doesn't, if she, like she's not giving you the signs, like, and if you're dropping off at her door and she's like, but if she's, I don't know, if she's like, playing around with her keys, kind of, pretending like
What are
she,
some of the social cues you want to be looking for?
Yeah, if if she's stalling a bit, before opening up the door or something like that. If like
flipping her hair.
Yeah, and yeah, her hand to hair. If she, like I sometimes like, if all of a sudden if you're walking from like, one spot to the next, which I think that on dates you probably should, like you go to, if you're walking, let's say you're going from one bar to the next, you're walking there, that she's kind of gluing herself closer to you, like those type of things. Like if you're, like if you're opening the door and you kind of put your hand on her back to kind of help her out, like, and she's, and it's all about reading her, like
she's not pulling away,
she's not pulling away, she's accepting
it.
it. Yeah, those little things, right? So there's all those little tricks to kind of see, like, is she, what? And I mean, because I've been on dates where, I kind of was like, after the, like, on the first date, was like kind of feeling that maybe she's not really there, right? Yeah, so I'm not gonna go in for a kiss yet, right? Like, maybe I'll wait till the second date, right, for that, right? So it's all about reading their comfort level and where they are, and there's certain things that you can, that they can do to read that, right? To read their comfort level. But I mean, yeah, then the Me Too has definitely. It's making, and you can't blame it. Guys are like, like they're wondering too, like, they don't want to be that guy that like, maybe, went in for a kiss when a girl wasn't giving that vibe, and all of a sudden they're seen as like, a creep or something like that, right? Yeah.
And what do you feel about like the term, like, you hear a lot about, toxic masculinity, men have to be more sensitive, what's the general consensus out there, because, let's be real, a lot of us men aren't really super in tune with our emotional or feminine side. And, I grew up rural Argyle, like, grew up lobster fishing with dad, good upbringing, but, fishing with dad was tough. There's, there wasn't a lot of like lovey-dovey, it was a lot of negative reinforcement. So, I would say I grew up kind of to be a man's man. And I don't really, one of the things I struggle even in my marriage is being a bit more communicative and expressing maybe how I feel or and then and then you hear about how, men are too soft now, and, where does that play into things?
I mean, hey, I don't know, depending who you talk to, they might say that I have a problem with communication too, but
yeah.
I mean, I think that's one of the things with men in general is that, like, it was funny, guys. I was talking to someone yesterday who said that, the biggest, the biggest difference between like men and women is that men can think about nothing. Like, you can, how many times have you been like, you're sitting on the couch, you're watching somebody says like, what are you thinking about? Nothing. And you're actually not thinking about anything.
Just watching TV.
Yeah, just watching TV. What do you mean? I'm not thinking about anything. Women, and then I think that is what he said to you, like, I've never ever not thought about anything since I was like, oh yeah, exactly. So it's like women they don't ever not think about something, right? And so, in terms of, and you know what, I mean, we grew up in, same area, and I was, I mean, I grew up, I grew up playing hockey, growing up with sports, and in the locker rooms and stuff like that. So that
if you're
whole
too sensitive, you're kind of like a sissy.
Yeah. So I mean, I get that, but I mean, there's actually a really good book called The Mask of Masculinity, and I think it's like Howes. Last name is Howes that wrote it, and he was actually he played in the NFL. He was a football player or whatever. So he grew up the same type of thing, right? Same, in that environment. And he said it was kind of, I like what he said in his book where he talks about vulnerability and how vulnerability is actually a masculine trait. And when we think about vulnerability, we think about, oh, like I'm gonna like sit down and we're gonna cry and like
Yeah, hold each
you know,
other.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna tell you like, you know what, you know, anybody listening out there for dating, do not do that. You know, you remember, you're the girl that if you're dating or whatever, she's not your therapist, right? You can go and cry on the couch with your therapist all you want, but like, however, on that though is that what he kind of talks about, like, you know, that's what we think when we think about being vulnerable, but no, actually, going up to a girl and asking and saying like, man, I was gonna kick myself if I didn't just come up here and introduce myself, um, like that.
Just putting yourself out there is
That
kind
is
of demonstrating some vulnerabilities.
that demonstrating vulnerability, which in turn is showing confidence, which in turn is showing masculinity. So this whole idea that like, oh, that like we have to be. I think we have a um a false impression of what masculinity is, and we sometimes have a false impression of what um vulnerability is, if that makes sense. Masculinity is, you know, is being confident in who you are, you know, and that's what I try to teach. Masculinity is, you know, standing up for what you think is right. And you know, like, yeah, I think that there's, you know, Dr. Robert Glover, who wrote, you know, he wrote the book, you know, the No More Mr. Nice Guy. He talks about that. He talks a lot about masculine, energy and being masculine, and it, you know, and that whole idea that people have this wrong idea of what masculine actually is. You know, masculine is, you know what, it's doing what's right because you know that it's right, having good values, good morals, and being able to show that in your everyday life, and having a purpose. The big thing is purpose, right? We we whatever that is. If it's starting a business, if that's your purpose, and you are, if it's volunteering at the food bank, if it's coaching little league, if it's and if it's doing martial arts, if it's being in a pottery, it could be anything, but your purpose and the fact that like no one is going to take you off that purpose, like that's being masculine, right? And and that's the whole idea, is that like when I work with people, is that we're gonna find your confidence, but we're gonna figure out what your purpose is, and you're working that purpose. And if like if your job is your purpose, that's fine, whatever, right? And you're gonna stay with that. And I always say that if we look at masculine energy, and I always say that my favorite scene, I'm like, as I told you, I'm big into boxing, so I'm a big boxing fan, and my favorite movie of all time is um Rocky. So I bring a lot of Rocky references and stuff, and one of the big things is, I say like Rocky 4, when he's gonna fight, Ivan Drago, and he's at the bottom of the stairs, and Adrian looks at him, and she says, what, like, why do you have to do it? Like, what, like, like, why do we need to fight him? And he says, I'm a fighter, that's what I do. And then she says, like, you can't win. And then he looks at her, and he still goes and fights on driver. Like, that's having your purpose. Like, he knows that his purpose is that this
Win
is
or lose,
win or lose. I need to do this, right? And I also like the other part that I like in Rocky, is when he Rocky 3, which is my favorite out of all of them, and most people it's not, but for me it's my favorite. And he's with Apollo on the beach, and they're running, and then Adrian goes to him, and she's like, what is it? Like, what are you, what are you afraid? And he says, for the first time, I'm afraid. And that is him being vulnerable. For the first time, he's admitted to her that he's afraid, and that's being vulnerable to be like, but he keeps on because that's his purpose, right? So I find that that's, in a sense. So, finding out what you're into, what you're into, and and from that, and the fact that because, you know, so many guys will do that. They'll I see it all the time, and women find this unattractive where they will start, maybe when the woman, when she met him, he was going to the gym. He was, and he was like, he had all these things that he was doing. And then all of a sudden, as soon as,
He hooks one on.
yeah, hooks went on, he stops doing all those things and he stops his purpose. And then next, 6 months later, she
left
leaves,
him.
she left him, and he wonders why.
You let yourself go, but
Yeah, you basically just like you were no longer
what she's seen.
what she's seen, and you were no longer living your purpose. So all of a sudden, she didn't see you as masculine.
I got another thing I didn't,
Yeah.
I probably haven't told a lot of people this, and I mean, some of my university friends, a lot of them I'm not close with anymore. Life happens, you grow up, part ways. But I remember being a young 20-year-old Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously gym was a big thing for me, played a ton of hockey. I think we grew up very similar lifestyles, and, had a few girlfriends through high school, got cheated on a couple times, kind of got jaded from that. And when I was going through university, like, I was kind of in and out on if I even wanted a girlfriend in university, but, I guess when I was trying to make strides in that direction, I would always, I was taught to be, although, I would say I'm a man's man, I was taught very traditional, things that men should do, like open the door for men or for women, help them get seated at the table, flowers on the first date or whatever. And funny enough, the feedback that I would get from other buddies that were like really good at getting girls were like, man, you're too nice. You got to treat them a little bit less nice. So what do you think about that?
I mean, I've heard that, and there's that. There's the red pill movement that I'm not really a fan of, but on that, I think there's some truth, and there's some things that are not so true. Whatever is that, and I mean, yeah, no flowers on the first date, but I do think that chivalry's not dead. And for example, I remember bringing a girl out on asking a girl out on a date, and I was like, yeah, and I said, okay, I'll go pick, give me your address, and I'll go pick you up. And she was like, well, no, I can just meet you there. And then my answer was like, well, how am I going to like open your car door like a gentleman if I'm meeting you there? And she's like, oh no, you don't have to do that. No, I do. I will see you at 7. Right. So sort of those things.
Right.
But so, I mean, there's a way that you can go about that and make it like sort of like cute. And I mean, and women love chivalry, especially now, because it's sort of dying. So as much as like women will be like, it's interesting because I've done like talked at like forums and stuff where I've talked in front of like like in like a room just full of women, and then it's like where they want to like hear like the male perspective from the male dating coach, right?
Yes.
I didn't talk about going into something that it's like,
Right.
whoa, I'm getting thrown in the fire on this one,
Yeah,
like
going through the gauntlet.
yeah, exactly. Like all we have a room full of women who are all like these strong, independent women who are
Yeah.
like sort of like, I don't, no, I don't need anybody that
Boss ladies kind of
yeah,
shit.
exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of them, big CEOs, whatever. However, they will always tell you too that like they appreciate when a guy will open their doors, like, especially in the fact that like a lot of these women like are, especially if they're like so used to being in positions where they're making decisions where they are where they're they have to be that leader. to be able to go out on a date and have someone plan the date for you and pick you up and open your door and do all those things that they just have to show up, is like it puts them into their feminine, and then all of a sudden you are in your masculine, right?
Right.
So because it's like, and then, again, masculine, feminine energy. Treating the, however, it's interesting what you say, and I've seen this, and I'm sure like you've seen it before, where maybe growing up you were like, how is it that girl's with that asshole,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
Tons of times.
yeah, like, and it's, and I mean, I think that goes with age. I mean, I think that's very normal, and I have theories on it, and I mean, these are my theories. I don't know, and I don't know, how much research is out there on it, but it also comes back to a lot of it that, it's intertwined with a lot of the things that I've read, in the sense that, again, going back to, the book No More Mr. Nice Guy, there's a line of like, if you were too, what they consider nice, right? That means like, what is nice is, it means that like you don't have a backbone, and you're just like, like I said, you're gonna drop everything for them, right? That all of a sudden is like, all of a sudden you are no longer, it's not that, it's demasculating, right? You're demasculating yourself. So I think that, for one thing, I think especially girls, when they like, I mean, girls when they're younger, I mean, they're going into the dating world, and like, or I guess they're learning about the opposite sex or whatever, and they're attracted to guys without actually, I mean, at a young age, I mean, you're talking like maybe 16 on, or and your early 20s, they're attracted to guys, and they don't know why. They don't know why they're attracted to them, but they are, and it's mostly like, yeah, it's the assholes. Well, you know what? It's because, that, I hate to say it like that, sort of like that asshole. I mean, it's not really that they're attracted to the assholes, that they're attracted to the fact that this guy is like sort of masculine, because he's not going to get off his center. Like, he's not
fucking around. Or
yeah,
something.
exactly. He's not just gonna like, oh, yeah, like, it's, if you start like a little bit, like, it's just like, oh, like, I mean, anything. Like, I mean, like, I've seen it before, where it's like some guy, he's like, oh, like, I remember I was at like a, like at a game at like the, skybox here, and there was this very attractive girl, and like this, obviously you could tell that this guy was like totally into her, all over her, and he was like, oh, like, did you want water, like, and then it's like, oh, are you cold, I can get you a coat, like that type of thing. Overwhelming, and then the girl's just like, yeah, get out of here, right? Like, the sort of thing, right? So there's, like, there's that, like, so it's that fine line that you really gotta watch, right? Then it's just like, okay, dude, you have no backbone here, right? So it's like, you have to, I mean, and then as girls get older, I think they start to be able to disassociate between an asshole
and a good man.
And a good man. Right, so in the end, that asshole he
gets phases out.
He gets phased out, and he finishes last, right? But at the beginning, he's the one that's kind of he's leading the race, because, and like, girls don't really know why. And then as they get older and they get a bit more mature, right? Because as we know, like you said earlier, right? Women mature, men really don't.
Yeah,
right.
We're just kids forever.
Kids forever. I mean, one of the things that was told to me was like, women, they change with every decade. So like a 20-year-old girl, a 30-year-old girl is different than a 20-year-old girl. A 40-year-old girl is different than a 30, 50, 40. So so they tend to change with every decade. Where a guy, like, we don't change. Like, we turn 14, we hit puberty, and like, we haven't really changed. Like, we're still like, put a 50-year-old man and a 14-year-old boy together and send them on a road trip. Guarantee you, they're probably having a good time. They're probably thinking of the same thing. They're gonna get along.
Age is the only difference.
The only difference between the two, but they're thinking the same.
Yeah.
Right. Like, put a 20-year-old girl and a 40-year-old girl on a road trip together, and tell them if they're
probably be at our throats.
Yeah, exactly. They're not gonna have anything in common.
Yeah. So listen, I don't mean, this has been a great conversation, and I just have a 4:00 I got to get to in Dartmouth, but I was just thinking, kind of trying to tie in our whole conversation, for the guys that are out there that are maybe, dabbling back in the dating scene or first entering, whether you got money or you're just average, what would be like the top three things that for the men looking to improve themselves? Like, what are the top three things that they should work on?
First thing is they gotta find they gotta find their purpose and really work on their purpose and really figure out what that is and work on it. You know, and that there's that shelf. It doesn't your health, right? It doesn't hurt to help your health. So if that's that's going to a gym, joining a fitness class or something like that, where your health. And um it kind of depends on what aspect. If you're working on, if it's on social media, if it's on social media, like maybe some better pictures. But all in all, is that you have to you just have to work on yourself to be that rounded person, right? Like me, so that because it's all about, in a sense, and if we're really trying to find a partner, it's so that when we find that partner, they just fit into our lives. So we are not changing ourselves.
Yeah, you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole.
Exactly, right? We're not changing ourselves for someone else. We are we're working on ourselves. So if it's if it's coming to someone, myself, or another male dating coach, right? Like if it's coming to me to work with me, where we work on yourself and we figure out like what you're into, what you want, and we get you. Because also I got to say too that online dating, that's only just one avenue, right? So you should look at it like this is another avenue to meet someone, but there are other ways to meet people. So if it's, like making, you want to be social in the sense that like, like if you're, like I said about fitness, if you're into running, like maybe you join like a running club. And then that way, you are, you're meeting people who have a similar interest as you.
Yeah, good call.
And then you are actually, and then, it's your way to be social. And and on top of that, women are like, oh, wow, this guy's like, he takes care of his health, and he is socially good, and and then it's a way to meet people, a way to be social. And then you're working. That's still working on your purpose. And yeah, and just surround yourself with with like-minded people, and eventually, you meet someone who it falls into that. It doesn't happen overnight. But I do believe that there's someone out there for everyone. And but if we work on ourselves to be that that high quality guy that women are looking for, we end up meeting someone who that high quality girl that we're looking for as well. But again, we need to be the high quality guy, and by being the high quality guy, it's finding who we are, surrounding ourselves with like-minded people, and staying centered and on our purpose, and moving in that direction.
That's super cool. So to summarize, if I got it right, find your purpose,
Mm-hmm.
take care of yourself,
Yeah.
put yourself out there,
Yeah.
and just don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
Get out there, join a club, whether it's running, jiu-jitsu, boxing.
Yeah.
Do the apps, and eventually someone will find you.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, my man.
All
This
right.
was a great chat.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
Enjoyed
got to
it.
rush away.
No,
but
no,
I
it's
just
okay.
had a quick hour, but
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool to have another episode someday, because I think there's a lot more material we could dive into.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'll definitely come back anytime. But as you can see, I love to talk. I love
it
talking.
must be the back home thing.
Exactly.
Gift the gab.
exactly. And yeah, if there's any viewers out there I should not viewers, I guess listeners, anybody listening out there, you know what? If you're into coaching or anything like that, to just go to the Book of Love. Canada.ca, or book a 50-minute consultation with me, and we can have a chat, and and because I'm here to, you know, help people on their journey, and it, you know, nothing makes me happier than when I get either a text or a phone call or something, and then I find out that someone has met their match, and
That's
you know,
awesome.
yeah, so
Very fulfilling stuff.
yeah, it is for sure.
All right, Sean.
All
Thanks
right.
so much for coming on. We'll let you get back out to your day.
Yeah.
And we'll keep in touch.
All right, sounds great.
Have a good one.
Yeah, you too.